the brew. Sip, sip, all the drink in the cup. Got to flip it on its top. If you don't miss, it's next on the list. Down the line, no time to stop. Puff, puff, pass it off to the left. Let the haze fill up your lungs. Pick all the sticks and roll it up quick. Seal the paper with your tongue. Pack, pack, pack it all in a bowl as I burn right through the grain. Taking the hit alone is a sin. Evil smile starts to gleam. Pop, pop, all the colors and shapes make my world turn over slow. A penny pill to make myself chill. Just sit back, enjoy the show. Drop, drop, drop them all in my hand. Give me all that I can hold. Shovel it to push down the sin. Please don't find my body cold. Flick, flick, all the lighters they go. Light my path to happy days. Twink and drag on the scene. How I want to spend my days. Beep, beep, what the ATM said. So I'll try some more on E. Still let it stick till I do it. Yes, I'll put my mind at ease. Just one more time, I'll make my mind at Say I'm a stranger, they don't know me. Here I am in black and white, what can't you see? Say I'm drifting far up to sea. Why is it so sad that this is how I'm gonna be? They say we're all the same. Take a look around. I'm the one picking you back up off the ground. All your little games are tearing us apart. I don't know why you just can't listen to your heart. Listen to your heart. Take it or leave it, cause this is all you're gonna get. They call me a sinner, this I can't contest. Hey, it's life, you're gonna have at least one regret. All my little faults are seeping through the cracks. I don't know how much I can take if I'm gonna last. Look a little closer and baby you will see. It's you and me and that's the way that I think it should be. I think it should be.
Good afternoon and welcome. You're here for day 14 of Teen Driver Education, the Hernandez Driveway. Once again, you're here live at 5 for your afternoon driving lesson here with Steve. And today we're going to be talking about adverse conditions and handling emergencies. All right, so this is where we learn how to stay safe, right? How to take care of stuff. And one of the emergencies that we're going to be learning about today is changing a tire. And hopefully y'all can be self-sufficient on that. I saw a 25-year-old dude that needed help changing his tire on my way home from work not too long ago. And I stopped and I asked him if he needed a jack or a cruceta. He's like, no, I got everything. I'm like, awesome, so then you were good to go. Do you need some water? I can run down to the store and get you some. It's like, that'd be great. The person that's gonna change my tire won't be here for half an hour. And I was confused, but I was like, all right, cool. I'll go get you some water. His dad showed up to go change his flat tire. Grown individual needed assistance. So try it out, folks. It's actually kind of self-satisfying. It's kind of awesome to have that, like, yeah, I did this feeling. All right? So definitely something to look into because we're going to talk about that today. All right, so, and wow, that just descaled completely. There we go. All right, so adverse conditions and handling emergencies, the Hernandez Driveway. All right, folks. Now, okay, so first we're going to talk about your windshield because it's really important to keep your windshield, especially the front windshield, clean. All right, many people keep the outside clean, but forget about the inside. And let me tell you something stupid that happened to me today. So I saw this little water bottle in my cabinet, and I was like, I would like to bring some soda with me. I am thirsty. So I just grabbed the water bottle and I put some soda in there and I closed it up, and it's one of those little ones that's like metal on the outside, metal on the inside, so the stuff stays cold. I was kind of excited about that. And then as I'm getting to the corner, I stop and I'm doing my counting and I'm like, I'm getting a little sip of soda right now. So it has this little straw on the top. And well, this is the first time I've ever made the mistake. I vaguely thought that there was a reason that I shouldn't. I was like, maybe it overpressurizes, can cause the thing to pop. I don't know what's going on. I wasn't really concerned. I was in a hurry and I was just looking for a container. So I flicked this little straw up and I find out why you're not supposed to put carbonated beverages in there. It turned it into a pressure washer. It was squirting foamy soda just straight out the nozzle at high velocity. And my front windshield was most definitely just splash, squirted, hose down. But aside from that super weird, super blonde moment that I had, and if I have any blondes in class, I don't actually mean that you have lower intelligence. I mean I've been huffing fumes or something from dyeing other people's hair or some crazy nonsense because I don't know why. It just didn't occur to me that that was probably not a good idea, even though part of me said it was. So, you know, everyone does silly things from time to time. Don't ever get mad at yourself when you do. Just, you know, smile, laugh about it, and move on because it'll make a good story as soon as you stop being angry. All right? But it's not just things like that to get our front windshield dirty. When we're driving and we're talking to someone, well, we're still facing straight forward. And I don't know if y'all know this, but each and every one of y'all spits when you talk. Maybe not a lot. Most of you are probably refined enough or you know, don't have the lisp that causes the massive, you know, like the Sylvester and Tweety Bird sort of spraying, but everyone does it. All right, there are going to be situations where you just your mouth launches, and it's not even in your control. But because that happens while we're talking, the inside of our windshield gets a lot of that. And what's in our mouth? Well, we've got digestive enzymes We've got oils and fats if we've eaten anything recently. We could have starch or sugars. We could have a lot of stuff in our mouth because food and particles stay in our mouth for a long time. So as we're talking and we're getting this all over our windshield, we start to have a windshield that starts to do this, right? Because lots of people remember clean the outside. You know, you go to the gas station, bust out that squeegee. You don't actually own one, but you'll use theirs every time because you want to keep your windows clean and you get the free liquid and everything when you go to the gas station. So you just do that, right? But when was the last time you just took a paper towel and sprayed some Windex and wiped down the inside? And if you don't have Windex in the house, the same liquid that you use to clean your windshield by pouring it into the reservoir will work just fine because that's what it's for, right? So if you have a jug in the car of windshield washer fluid, you can just splash some of that on a rag, wipe the inside windows. It does make a difference, a massive one. Try to do it at least once every 3 months for the front, once a year for the back. All right. Now, not having your windows clean and then having bright sunshine come through can create sun glare and make looking through your windshield very difficult. Right? And glare is basically erratic diffusion of light. And that means that whereas light should be going straight through the glass because it's glass, all the little things on it, all the little chemicals and liquids and oils and such cause the light to bend like as if it was prisms. And that means suddenly we have like a flash or an area that has like just like more light than it should. It's kind of like a flashlight beam almost because that light is being spread out. Instead of staying focused, it's getting, and then it's happening thousands of times with all these little imperfections, and we wind up with glare that we just can't see through. All right? Makes it tough. Now, nighttime and headlights. Now, when do you turn on your headlights at night? Well, for those of you that like to drive with your headlights off once it is dark, you're lucky because you get 30 minutes. 30 minutes after the sun has set and it becomes pitch black is when the lights, well, don't trust the pitch black because honestly I think it takes about 40 minutes for pitch black on those nights. But 30 minutes after the sun has dipped below the horizon line, the law states you have to turn on your headlights. And you can turn them back off 30 minutes before it comes up above the horizon line. Okay, 30 minutes after sunset, 30 minutes before sunrise. All right? Those are the times you get to drive, or that you have to drive with your headlights on. The rest of the day, unless you can see, or you aren't able to see clearly for 1,000 feet, you don't have to. Right? But anytime you can't see clearly, dust storm, snowstorm, rain, fog, whatever, low beams. All right? The only time you should use your high beams is when you are on an unlit country road at night by yourself. All right? If you are sharing that road with someone else, they are slightly ahead of you, then just, use the light that they're producing to advise you on road conditions. You don't need to have your brights on blinding them. Now, in fog, rain, and snow, what kind of lighting do you use? As I just mentioned, we only use one kind of lighting for like basically everything, and then unlit country roads at night is the only time we use our high beams. So what type of light should we use? Our low beam. Now, if you have fog lamps, you can use those, but not every vehicle comes equipped with them. And the interesting thing about fog lamps work just like your high beams, except they're mounted a foot off the ground. So when the light goes straight out of them, what it's illuminating is the roadway itself. Everything that is close to the ground, but it's not getting up high enough to blind anybody, which is kind of fantastic. So if your vehicle has them, use them. Right? What other precautions should you take in fog, rain, and snow? Slow down. Anytime weather is not perfect, we need to slow down. And I love that about the Valley. We may still be messing up a lot on drinking and driving. We may still have a ton of individuals that think it's okay to text and drive. And we definitely still have too many people driving without a license or car insurance. But the one thing that we've figured out down here, because it rains pretty heavy kind of regularly down here, and a few times a year we get the kind of rain that makes people slow down. And when it rains hard, we have no problem slowing down. The expressway speed limit 70, doesn't matter, everyone's going to do 45. You might have like that one crazy person going 50, but that's it. Everyone else knows, right? Because we respect it. So you slow down, right? Increase your following distance because your reaction time, okay? When you press on those brakes, remember, stopping distances are under ideal conditions. Fog, rain, and snow are introducing moisture to the roads and can make them slicker, can reduce your traction. So increase following distance so that you have that extra time, so that you can slow down more carefully and maintain control. All right? Now, blowout. When you have a sudden loss of air pressure to your tire, for whatever reason, we call that a blowout. Sometimes a blowout is an actual rupture in the sidewall. Okay? That's just boom. That's a traditional blowout. Other times, an overinflated tire can actually just pop completely off the rim, which is that. It's a very loud popping noise. And then, boom, you feel the drop. Okay? If that happens, technically the tire was still good at that moment. It was just an overpressure situation. Unfortunately, you are going to continue to roll on that for a minimum of 150, 200 feet, depending on how fast you were going. So that tire will be destroyed, and probably the rim too, in that particular situation. That's why it's important to make sure we check our tire pressure when things get hotter. And when things get colder, we definitely need to check, because the last thing we need to do is be riding on our rims. All right, but in the event of a sudden loss of tire pressure, grip the wheel firmly. Ease off the accelerator. Do not slam on the brakes. Check traffic. Gain control. All right, slowly position your vehicle where you're going to be able to come to a stop, off to the side of the road or the shoulder, depending on the situation. And then gently apply the brakes. Okay, press in the brake, and once you feel the brakes are starting to work, that's where you hold it. And you'll let momentum and that little bit of braking slow you down and stop you. Because if you don't, anybody ever had a table, or have you ever had a desk at school where one of the legs was shorter than the other and it would not stop wobbling? Well, if you wobble at 50 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, that rim that could be made of steel or aluminum is going to be damaging and gouging the roadway, as well as the parts that are attached to it. If that's the front end, that can get pretty pricey real quick. If that's the back end, it takes a lot of abuse, but once the damage is caused, then that's immediately guaranteed going to be a hefty price tag. So ease the brake. Just press it, and once you feel, and that's the braking point, right? The point where the brake starts to work, and that's all you're going to do is just get it to that braking point, and you're good to go. All right? And, of course, stop in a safe location. Don't stop in the middle of the roadway. Don't stop somewhere you're going to get hit, and definitely don't stop somewhere where you're not going to have any kind of room to try to get that tire changed. Even in the event you do have a service that comes out and does it for you, nobody wants to be with like half of their body in an actual roadway while trying to change a tire. Just not a situation anyone would be comfortable with. All right, and so next. Now, changing that tire though, right? All right, so I'm going to talk about the equipment that comes with vehicles real quick, and the sort of equipment that you actually need. All right, because every tire or every vehicle comes with some kind of spare tire if you buy it new. And unfortunately, a lot of times that spare tire looks like this. Now this little sucker right here, all right, is commonly referred to by basically most adults that know what it is as a donut. All right, and a donut is the spare tire that comes with most current vehicles. Now, some smart companies or some vehicles, they've gotten to the point where they're like, all right, we're selling them a $50,000 car. We can give them a tire that's the regular size. And so some vehicles are coming with that full-size spare. Anything that doesn't, well, poses an issue. Why? Well, for several reasons. One, this tire needs to be inflated to 50 pounds per square inch in order to function. And if it's 10 pounds light, you'll be riding on the rim on any vehicle with any real kind of weight. Like a smart car, maybe like a Ford Focus, wouldn't be running on the rim with those 10 pounds shy. But anything bigger than that probably would be. And on every dip and bump, you'd still run that risk that the tire's just gonna pop, right? So they require a lot of maintenance. You got to make sure that pressure is just fine. And when a tire is just sitting there, not in use, it doesn't have a good a seal as it would if it was in use. So it's losing air pressure. So we need to check that regularly, right? Now, it has a few restrictions though, which you wouldn't expect from the thing that the car company gives you so that you can, continue on your merry way after you have a flat tire. But these restrictions are important to know because the big one is it's not intended for use more than 15 miles. So if you are more than 15 miles from the nearest town, that's almost guaranteed to fail you, even in the event that you had the perfect amount of air pressure in it, right? Next problem is you can't take it above 45 miles an hour. So if you have a blowout on the expressway, you can't get up to expressway speed to finish going where you're going and get your tire changed. You're going to have to immediately exit the next available exit, and going 45 or 40 on the expressway when everyone else is doing 70 can be a little bit dangerous. All right? And it just, in general, it's not. That's like buying a goldfish for a child that desperately wants a pet. It's a disaster waiting to happen. You know it's not going to stick around for as long as you need it to, and you're just setting yourself up for a bad day. Okay? So, how do we get around this? Well, it's actually quite simple. We live in the RGV, the Rio Grande Valley, and you have your choice of like 40 different scrap yards. So call them up, let them know what kind of vehicle you have, and be like, hey, I would like to get a rim that will fit this vehicle. I'm looking for something steel, inexpensive. I don't care if it matches the stuff that I have, but it'd be nice. All right? But I'm not paying extra if it does. Right? Why? Because you can get a full-size steel rim because steel is worth 3 cents the pound. So to a scrapyard, they will make much more money selling you the rim for $20 than they would selling it for the metal cost. However, if they get greedy and they want to charge you like $50 for it, well, I mean, you can go out and get you a nice rim for $50. Well, not like nice, but you can get one that probably matches your vehicle for about that price if you're willing to pay that much from a reputable junkyard, right? They shouldn't be trying to get rich on stuff like that. So you might pay 30, you might pay 40. You might even have a vehicle that only has aluminum rims and wind up paying $50 for your rim. Okay? But the thing is that having this full-size rim means that the tire you mount on it is going to be a full-size tire. And that can be plus or minus, and that's going to lose less pressure in the trunk because it's not inflated as high. It's only going to be inflated to somewhere in the 30s, whereas the donut has to be at the 50s, so higher pressure, more air escaping. Okay. And now, the most important thing. You can drive on that spare until you have time to address the issue. Whether that's next week, whether that's next month, doesn't matter. You can keep going, you can keep using the vehicle, and your vehicle is back to 100% once you put a full-size spare on there. So, we go to a junkyard, we buy a used rim that'll fit our vehicle. Then we go to a used tire shop, and boom, we get the combo, and we spend less than what it costs to buy a brand new donut. Okay? Now, our deal for the tire is all set. Okay? Because we can't trust the donut, but we absolutely can trust a full-size spare. Right? And there's a lot more wiggle room on that air pressure with that full-size spare. There's also going to be much easier time keeping air pressure in that tire because it's not inflated to that same amount. So lots of good reasons to go up there. No good reasons to stay on the donut. Now next, we're going to talk about jacks. All right. Now, there are two kinds of jacks that are in common use by people on the roadway. All right. One is for individuals who think everything is going to go dandy and they're never going to need it. And when they do, they absolutely hate it. And it's known as a scissor jack. This is a basic device that meets the absolute basic requirements to qualify as a functional jack. All right, it's got a screw mechanism that you turn using the little tool that comes with this that you also happen to loosen your bolts with. All right, problem with this little thing is the base. All right, when we talked about center of gravity, we learned that the smaller the wheelbase and the higher the car, the more likely a vehicle is to roll over. All right, that's why vehicles like Jeep Wranglers are built with roll cages already because they know it's probably going to happen if the person drives it aggressively. Well, this jack is beyond the Jeep Wrangler of. This thing is the giraffe on roller skates because when you have it all the way up, well, it's 16 inches tall. But its wheelbase, or its like bottom base, is less than 4 inches by 3 inches. Now, when we're talking about thousands of pounds of car on there, on roads that are less than ideal to be using a jack on, we're talking about a situation where the likelihood this is going to tip over is tremendous. And if the jack tips over while you're changing a tire, that could result in the car falling on you or parts getting damaged. So not something we want to have to deal with. So we've got this guy, and this one, they give it to you for free. They're like, oh, here's your spare tire, and here's the jack. And they're both absolute garbage because neither of them is reliable, neither of them is particularly safe. It's just kind of a hot mess. And they get away with it because they are meeting the minimum requirements. They are providing you a jack, they are providing you a spare tire. All right? Now, the next thing I want to discuss is, and let me show you what a real jack looks like. Now, these will run you about $50 now at a parts place, but if you take care of it and you don't lose the parts, one of these will last you the better part of your life. All right? It's a pneumatic jack. That means it works on air, and you just pump it, and it lifts your car. Now, we talk about wheelbase or the base size determining how stable something is. You can fit 8 of the other jack's base on the area covered by the tires here. Okay, that means that it is literally 8 times more stable, or has 8 times more surface area for that stability. All right, that's just such a dramatic improvement. And then you can raise or lower it quickly, easily, with just a twist of the bolt to lower. Whereas the other one is going to require 16 full revolutions for every inch that you raise the vehicle. That's a lot of work. Gonna take a bit of time. That jack will have your car up in 30 seconds. The other one, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and your arm's gonna be tired, and you're gonna be grouchy, and you're gonna be under a car, and you're not gonna be happy. All right. That's what an appropriate jack looks like. All right, and it's very simple. It's the jack itself. It comes with a bar for raising and lowering, and there's a pressure pin. As long as you keep that stuff, you're good to go. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is how you remove your bolts, right? This piddly little thing that Sir Isaac Newton would laugh at, or Aristotle would laugh at, I should say, is a lug wrench, right? This is a single-purpose, single-size, 12-inch lug wrench. This tool is the tool that they expect you to remove your bolts with. Now, your bolts are typically machine tightened to 200 pounds of torque force. So that means you need to be able to apply with this 1 foot bar. Actually, it's less than a foot, so it's probably closer to like 300. But you would need to apply those same 200 pounds with your arm. Do you have that much force? When you like admire the guns in the gun show in the mirror, do you look like Thor from Thor Ragnarok, or at the very least like Jane Foster from Thor Ragnarok when she was all Thored up? If you don't, chances are that no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to get all the bolts off with this. Now, they do sell something slightly larger. It's called a cruceta. It's a cross lug wrench. And it's got 4 sizes. The 4 sizes that are typically used in conventional retail vehicles. Meaning, as long as you don't buy something crazy, like a Renault, you're going to wind up with a standard size, and it's going to work for it. And any Dodge, Ford, Mitsubishi, Mercedes, any of the regular companies, it's only when you get with the crazy ones like the Rolls Royce or that freaking armored car that you're talking different sizes. And the cruceta, on top of being the 4, it also provides 2 16-inch arms if you buy the 32-inch one, or 2 14-inch arms if you get the more compact one, which is still longer than this, and that would allow you to cut that power required in half. So that's now 100 pounds. But I suggest we go one step beyond, and I have what's called a cheater bar. And all it is there was this really awesome dude, and Aristotle. He was a real smart guy way back in his day, and he made the claim, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum high enough, and I will move the world. And what he said is technically accurate. But I mentioned that quote because the length of your lever tells you how hard you have to work. All right? If your lever were, say, 4 times longer, then you would need 1/4 the force. If your lever were 10 times longer, then you would need 1/10 the force of one 10 times shorter. Well, this is 1 unit. All right? The cross lug wrench can be 2, or you can get a cheater bar 4 or 5 times longer than this. One that's just long enough to fit in your trunk in there diagonally, that will slide over the largest lug, and then you just use that as your lever. And it works. It works amazingly because the generation of force at the end of that lever is significant compared to the amount required when you don't have something quite so long. So, having gotten ourselves a full-size spare, a good reliable jack, a cruceta, or at the very least, a cheater bar for this little dinky guy right here, we are now prepared to actually change our tire. Okay, and I'm sorry I went so much over that, but not having the right equipment can make this simple task feel impossible. It could actually make it impossible. All right. I mean, first and foremost, you need a jack, you need a spare tire, and you need some sort of lug wrench. If you don't have all 3 of those, you cannot change your tire. Now you can take your tire off and then call an Uber, have them take you down to a tire shop, go get another tire, get another Uber to take you back to your car, put your tire back on, and boom, you're good to go. You spent $30. Or you could be prepared and have everything in the vehicle already and spend $50 just buying the tire and the rim. Spend $50, well, maybe $70 getting yourself a good cruceta, that cheater bar, and a good jack. But those will last you a lifetime, right? Other than the fact that they stole the bar from my jack, the one that allows me to raise and lower it, last time they broke into my vehicle, I'm still using the same jack that I was using when my kids were preschool, so at least 10 years, and still works fine. Whenever somebody needs it, I bust it out because I hate those little bitty jacks. So, park on level ground, shift to park, and turn on your hazard lights. If you're on the side of the roadway in your vehicle or going to be doing something around your vehicle on the side of the roadway, emergency lights so that everyone knows, hey, I'm right here, please don't run me over. Okay? Set the parking brake. This, coupled with your vehicle set into the parking gear, is going to be a secondary lock to keep your vehicle from moving too much. All right? Now, block the wheel diagonally opposite the flat tire. What blocking is you're putting something in front of and behind a tire to prevent it from moving, and this is a second thing to help keep the vehicle from moving. Because, especially if you're using that little buster jack that just is terrible and is going to make you do a whole bunch of extra work, if you're using that, you need this vehicle to move this much. 0. Not 1 iota, because 1 or 2 inches to the left or right is enough for that jack to tip over if it's not set in the proper, perfect position. All right? And should not be used on any kind of incline because problems will happen. Now, ask your passengers to get out. Why? Because people move. People move, jack moves, jack falls over, car gets more damaged. The people inside will not want to pay for your repairs. Now, if they're willing to put $1,000 in your hand that you will return to them if your vehicle is not damaged, and that you get to keep if your vehicle is damaged, then they can stay in the car because they're willing to pay for it. Everyone else is going to tell you, I don't have $1,000, or that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And when it's their car, we'll see how they feel about that. So get everyone out the car, all right? If Juelita's stuck in a wheelchair and she can't walk, well, then you need to make the judgment call. Is it going to be safer to leave her in the car or take her out? Can she move enough? Make the decision, all right? A baby in a car seat probably not going to make the car tip over. But, 100-pound adult moving around too much definitely could, right? Now, once everyone's out, take out your spare tire, your jack, your lug wrench, and your cheater bar. Position the jack underneath the vehicle with the head coming in contact either with the frame or the front or rear axle. Okay, those are the easiest things to lift off of because they're tough and they can support the lift. Right? If you're going off of something else, you could be damaging the vehicle. Make sure that it's the frame or one of the axles for easy peasy lemon squeezy, lifting of the vehicle. Right? Now, jack the vehicle up part of the way, so you're going to see the car coming up, but the tire's still going to be touching the ground. That's because we have a suspension, a spring that's constantly pushing down on those tires, and that's what helps smooth out all the bumps that you normally feel from the ride, and it makes it just kind of like a glide, and you don't really feel it. It's really nice, but when you're raising your vehicle on a jack, you need to jack beyond that point. All right? So you get the vehicle up part way, but while the tire is still touching the ground, we take out our lug wrench, our cheater bar, we pop that little cap off the front of the thing if it's got one. If not, we get to work and start loosening them up. First, try just the lug wrench. You're going to see that it's very difficult. It's not going to want to budge. Put your cheater bar on, start to twist with one hand at the far end, your strong hand at the far end, and another hand in the middle, just holding it there for support, both pushing, and you will be generating different levels of force with each arm. The one over here, the one on the end will be doing much more work than the one over here. But that's okay, because doing that, you're going to hear a popping, like metal scraping on metal noise, because those lug nuts are tight on there, as tight as they can get them to prevent them from slipping off, and then your tire rolls off and then you crash. Okay, they do that on purpose, so that means it's going to be effing hard to take them off. That's okay though. You get them up, get that vehicle up part way, you loosen them. Once you hear that ratcheting noise, and now you can just turn it with your arms without the cheater bar on all of them, then we continue to lift the vehicle completely off the ground, loosen up those bolts, take off the tire. Okay? Now, put your spare tire on. Sometimes we're going to have to raise the vehicle a little bit more to make this easy. And if you're having difficulty, what I like to do is either use my toe or a piece of 2x4. If you don't want to use your toe for this, use the 2x4. Keep a piece of 2x4 in the vehicle. Doesn't have to be big, just a little 4-inch piece is sufficient. All right? You set the tire up in front of the disc with the bolts. All right? And then you line it up so that everything's going to be lined up. You just need to lift the tire. Now, lifting the tire and pushing forward seems like it would be really simple, but for whatever reason, it's not. All right? I'm going to have to sit down and think of an invention that can fix this so that people can just, bam, get that tire on, but I haven't done so yet. I have not applied myself to this problem, but now that I think about it, maybe I need to. All right? But position the tire right there, and then if you're going to use your foot, roll the tire out of the way, just roll it a little bit, and then put your foot right there, and then position it back. And now with the tire on your foot, you've raised it, and hopefully to the point where it's even with the bolts. If it's not, then you just kind of like pivot your heel and kind of lift, try to use those muscles in your leg to get an extra little bit so that you can just push that straight up. All right? If you can't do that, use the piece of 2x4, and then you can use the lift to lift it just that perfect amount so you can push that tire right in, or lower it a little bit and then lift it back up. Right, get that perfect position. That way you can just slide it right on, because it is a little bit tough sometimes. All right, once you've got the spare back on though, tighten the bolts as tight as they go. Once the tire starts to spin, it's not going to tighten anymore. Okay, while the tire is floating, once you hit a certain level of tightness, the tire's just going to start spinning. That's okay, that's to be expected. All right, once you've got all of them to that tightness, and go in a star pattern, folks, when you're tightening the lug nuts. This ensures that the tire is flat against the brake disc, against the mounting disc for the, what is that stupid part called? The wheel assembly hub, right? That's what that whole thing is. But you want to make sure that it's nice and flat against that disc, because that's going to ensure that your tire is nice and straight. Because if you get it tight on one side and it's getting kind of pinched into position by the bolts on the other side and it's a little crooked, that will right away feel like you're wobbling when you drive. It's not going to be good, and it's going to be bad for your tire. So make sure you get it nice and straight and tighten in that star pattern. That star we learned as kids. Here, and then you go down and then back and then over and then down. If it's got 6, just same thing, incorporate across and then back diagonally and then just over. If it's got 7, same thing, you're just adding the extra points and you're going around it. You're going to basically the opposite side as you tighten the next one. So you tighten this one, then you tighten this one, then you tighten this one, then this one, and this one. And it's always the furthest one that still needs to be tightened away from it. That will make sure that you're flattening it and getting that good facing, and your tire will be mounted straight. All right. Now, once it's to that point where it spins though, all of them spin, drop the tire all the way to the ground, and again we use our cheater bar, and this time tighten. Okay. When you tighten it up, you want to tighten once again until you hear that sound of metal rubbing on metal, and boom, your lug nuts are nice and super tight. If you can't get them to that tightness, swing by a tire shop and be like, hey, I just changed my spare tire. Can you check the air pressure and make sure that the bolts are tightened? They might charge you $1 or $2, or $5 for the assist, but they're gonna make sure everything's good. All right, so definitely a good idea, folks. All right, and try this on your own when your car isn't in a bad situation. Try this on your own when you're like parked at home. So that, just take a half an hour, take the tire off, put it back on, and make sure you tighten everything up, and then have someone else inspect to make sure you did a good job. That way, if you didn't, they can, hopefully fix it for you, teach you the right way to do it, because you don't want to drive off on that vehicle if you did make a mistake while putting the tire back on. That could, put you in a little bit of trouble. So practice first, because, it's better to know what you're doing when you're in the real life situation. That's why firefighters, they start fires in little shacks out in the middle of nowhere, and they practice putting them out because, practice makes you proficient at the very least. All right, so moving on. Where's my cursor? There we go. There we go. So total brake failure. Now your brakes are part of a hydraulic system, which means there's fluid involved. A fluid you will have to refill for still most cars. Right? A fluid that will run out, and so you need to check it from time to time. Yes, brake fluid's a real thing, and not having brake fluid means your vehicle may not stop. Okay? First thing we want to do, if we see that the brakes don't want to work, pump the brake pedal. Sometimes air gets into those lines, and since it's a liquid that causes the brakes to function, a non-compressible, sometimes that air gets in those lines, and you hit that brake pedal a few times, and the air will shift, and the non-compressible materials will get into the action zone, will be where they need to be, and the air is going to be getting squished off where it's not as negatively impacting it as hard. And so your stuff can start working. Then, of course, you do pull over somewhere and make sure that you got plenty of fluid, because that's going to be the easiest cause of this problem. Or if your brakes were not bled after you had a brake job, because things do happen where they can get air bubbles in the brake lines when they're replacing brakes. All right. If that doesn't work though, now we have to use the engine to slow down. If you're in a manual vehicle, downshift. All right. If you are in an automatic vehicle, shift into neutral. Okay. Gradually apply the parking brake once your vehicle has slowed down to less than 20. So once you shift into neutral, put on your emergency lights and get off the roadway and continue to ride on the shoulder until your vehicle gets down to like 20, 30 miles an hour. And then we slowly, barely start using that handbrake. Once it's at 20 or lower, then we can start using it a little more confidently. But at speeds above that, we run a risk that we're going to pull some Tokyo drift move that we don't know how to recover from and wind up in a bad collision. So make sure you do start doing this once the vehicle is slowed down. Now, another thing you can do, if your brakes aren't working, once you're in neutral, once you're off the roadway, well, from neutral, we can turn a car on or off. If you turn the vehicle off in neutral, you're going to lose speed much faster than if the car was still running, because everything shuts down and it's just going to slow you down. All right? So you can try that. Gradually apply the parking brake as you approach 20. You can start using it safely. Until then, it's an at your own risk thing. Just let inertia, momentum peter out. Right? Search for your open zones and steer to safety. Now, brake fade. When brakes overheat and lose their effectiveness, we call this brake fade. All right? When brake fade happens, and you'll know it happens because You've been pressing the brakes for a long time on a downhill. This is what the only situation that brake fade happens. All right, you are going down a very steep or a very long downhill road, and you're basically riding your brakes because gravity wants you to be going above the speed limit. All right, so you're just pressing the brakes nonstop, and then all of a sudden you feel, and the car just like accelerates without you, and your foot was on the brake, and you press on it, and it kind of responds, but it's not really slowing you down the way you want to, or at least not until you're really getting in there. So that's when you're experiencing brake fade, because cool things are able to maintain lots of friction. All right, that's why when you put cool oil into a frying pan, move it left and right, that oil just slowly goes across, doesn't even get all over the place. Heat that frying pan up, and that friction goes away, and that oil is now sliding and slipping all across and barely leaving any kind of residue. All right, so when this happens to you on those long downhills, just instead of freaking out, pressing that brake a little bit more, come to your stop as you pull off the roadway and park the car. Let those brakes just chill out for like 20 minutes. Because you might have maybe a little bit of water in the car, thinking, hey, I'll just pour some water on here to help cool this down. Well, brittle things do not like changing temperature rapidly, otherwise they shatter. An example of a brittle thing would be like your front windshield or your parking brakes, because these pads, these modern pads are polymer. They're made out of plastic and stone and other stuff, and it makes them amazing. It makes them last a really long time. They work way better than the rubber ones we used to have, but they experience the same problems. All right, and they come with one additional problem, that if you try to quickly cool these by either driving through water or splashing water on them, they could shatter, because that's what happens when a brittle object rapidly changes temperature, because the temperature change causes expansion and brittle things can't absorb that, so the irregularities cause micro fissures, which then causes everything to break. I've seen this happen to somebody's brakes, and basically it gouged their discs. It cost them close to $300 because their brake discs or pads just shattered, and they destroyed the discs in the process of trying to safely stop without dying. And you know, it was just one of those bad luck things, okay? But it happens, okay? And folks, and on that same note, never try to use hot water to de-ice a windshield, all right? If you want to de-ice a windshield, 1 gallon of water, 1 cup of rubbing alcohol, 1/2 cup of Dawn, mix it all up, spray it directly onto the windshield, and you'll see your ice melt down like it was not even there. It's amazing. Non-potable, of course, because of the Dawn and that rubbing alcohol. But it looks like a blue slushy or green slushy if you have that green isopropyl alcohol. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so yeah, water, don't use water to cool the brakes down. All right, the only thing that you can do to cool them down on those steep downhills is just stop for a while. Let them lose heat through, regular osmosis, radiant heat just going off into the air, coming out of the stuff, all right? I know that's not osmosis works, but I can't remember the word. Anyway, it's an exothermic reaction. Broken springs, because when we're talking about accelerator malfunction, we have 2 kinds of malfunctions: broken springs and stuck accelerator. A broken spring means you're not able to accelerate using the pedal anymore. All right, the accelerator pedal will be flat on the floor. Shift the vehicle into neutral, turn on your hazards, and get safely off the road while you come to a braking. Now, if you're on the expressway and you have cruise control, you can actually set your cruise control speed manually using the cruise control controls. And then once you're exiting closer to home, somewhere safe, somewhere near like a Walmart, a parking lot where you can get this address, you can then start slowing down, coming to that stop there, because the cruise control will at least maintain that speed for you. But once you're off the expressway, it's kind of you need to get to where you can get with whatever momentum you have, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to accelerate from a stop, because cruise control is not going to let you do that. Your vehicle's going to have to be driving downhill to get going fast enough, or you're going to press that cruise control resume button, and your car's going to try to take off like a bat out of heck, and you might get an exhibition of acceleration ticket. So we don't want to be using that to go from a dead standstill, folks. All right. Now, if your accelerator is stuck, that is the opposite problem. Instead of, oh, now I can't give it gas, now we're in a situation where our car is being given maximum gas and we can't get it to stop. Okay, first thing we can try is just like them old TVs, kick it on the side. A stuck accelerator is quite literally usually something gets hung up, caught, or stuck on something else. Kicking the side of the pedal can sometimes knock this loose and fix the problem. Lo and behold, no more emergency. It's fantastic. So the first thing you do if your pedal won't come up after you take your foot off it is kick that sucker. Use the side of your foot and hit it. And if it doesn't wiggle free, then we start going into emergency procedures. All right, you're gonna apply the brake. Your brakes will always be able to beat your accelerator. Your engine has nothing on your braking system because your braking system is simple to the point of perfection. There is probably not a more efficient way for vehicles to slow down and stop than what we currently have in cars right now. I mean, they may come up with something way more cool that, you know, transforms that momentum into something else. But right now, just for dead stopping, not gonna happen. All right, right now we're pretty much at the epitome of what the tech's gonna be. But that's good because that means that your brakes will always be able to overcome your engine and bring you to a stop. But with the engine working against you, it's gonna take much longer. So apply your brake to keep maintaining your speed, to keep yourself from over accelerating. Choose your escape path. Once you are in a safer position, shift the vehicle into neutral, turn the ignition off, and then once the car is no longer on and providing additional force, you stop normally. You stop just like you would if you had to stop from whatever speed you're going at that moment, right? And you come to the stop on the side of the road. Make sure you give yourself plenty of room, space to get it taken care of. And if you're near an exit and you know that it's going to be better to go down, then go down. If you know that you're going to have nice wide shoulders and plenty of room here on the expressway, but if you try to get off on the exit, it's going to be a madhouse, stay on the express. Use your better judgment, folks, because y'all have judgment. It's just, it's based on how much life you've already lived. That's why judgment gets better with time, because you have more experience to draw from. Yeah, I've been around for 40 years. That's close to 3 times as long as most of y'all. Obviously not 3 times, because some of y'all are much older than the 14. But that means I quite literally have experiences from that much longer than y'all do. If we eliminate the time that you can't remember because we're not logging in memories, I've got 37 years of experience, and the best that y'all have is like 14. Okay? So it's easier to have better judgment. But once we learn the right thing, we have a good stick to measure against, and our judgment goes up too. So pay attention when someone's explaining something on like how something works or something like that, because it helps. All right, so choose your escape path, shift to neutral, turn off the ignition, and come to that stop somewhere safe. And try to get that taken care of before you move your car again. If you can't, get a tow. All right, now high heels. All right, I've mentioned before, we will not permit anyone to drive with us or any one of our driving instructors if they are wearing high heels. Now, this is not targeting specifically women, and I'm sorry if you feel that it is. Cowboy boots have a heel, we don't permit them. Dress shoes that have a heel and that lip around them, we don't permit them. All right, gentlemen, if you got a pair of Superfly Cuban heels that you like to go dancing in, more power to you. I used to have a pair myself, but you can't wear them while driving. Why? Because that heel, when you're wearing flats, your pivot point is the heel of your foot. This is going to change your pivot point, so you're going to have to be more of a contortionist to be able to brake and accelerate as smoothly. And since y'all are beginners, we're not going to trust y'all in this situation. But even as experienced drivers, you should know, keep a pair of flats in the car, make them your driving shoes. All right? And it's safe. Because that pivot point difference is so dramatic that it could cost you to take a second longer, half a second longer, just to hit a brake. And when crashes are happening, seconds count, millisecond or hundredths of a second count. So whole seconds, half seconds, that's a long freaking time. All right, now dress shoots and boots, here it is. Be careful with dress shoots When you drive, the outer rim of the sole of the shoe can get caught behind brakes or accelerators. And then any vehicle with a high heel is altering your pivot point, changing the way your foot operates the brake and gas pedal. Okay, so neither are allowed on driving lessons. No dress shoes. So if you're an ROTC, keep a pair of sneakers in your car if you're going to come after or on a dress day. Like if you're going to come by after school on a dress day, Class A's, Class B's, you're still going to have your shiny black shoes, bring a pair of sneakers. If you feel that we're restricting you from wearing anything comfortable, you can wear Crocs as long as they have that little strap on the back and no lip, because it's just that enclosed shoe. We're fine with that. Totally comfy shoes, but no high heels, no low heels, no dress shoes, all right? And if you show up in flip-flops or high heels or boots, and the instructor says, I'm not driving them, they're not wearing appropriate shoes, you will be charged the $40 no-show fee because your proper shoes, your proper footwear did not show up. All right, folks? Because, your safety is our number one concern, but our safety is in there too. And if you can't do something the way that you've been learning and you have a moment of panic, that moment of panic can make the difference between an accident and avoidance of an accident. We want to make sure that everyone is in peak shape for driving. All right? I had a young lady started a driving lesson and was driving aggressive. So I told her jokes. I made her laugh. Once I got her out of that angry mood that she was in, I was like, we cannot drive angry. Driving angry, driving in any kind of heavy emotional state is gonna just have us ignoring things and acting impulsively. We gotta be level-headed. And I wouldn't let her drive until she calmed down. And she did. It just took a couple minutes. But, okay, so safety. We want y'all to be safe. So we're not going to allow y'all to drive in these shoes. Drive in the boots and the dress shoes and the heels. It's just not going to happen. All right, please don't get angry at us for the policy. It's with your safety in mind. If someone says, nobody ever told me, that's day 14. This is it, 57 minutes into the live stream. All right, folks. So, moving on. All right, engine failure. Well, your engine stops working suddenly. What do? Well, as we've said, when you're in neutral, you can turn your car on or off. So, in this situation, we're going to try to turn our car on. So we shift our vehicle into neutral. We start moving out of traffic. We start changing lanes immediately to get out of the roadway, because if the vehicle does not turn on, we're going to need to be on the side of the road when we break down, when the vehicle stops. So while the vehicle is still moving, and once you are already moving over or already in position in the rightmost or leftmost lane, whatever the safe situation for you was, attempt to restart the ignition while in neutral. If the engine turns over, fantastic. Crisis averted, and you drive on. Get that checked out by your mechanic. Find out why it did that in the first place. Right? Okay. Might be something, might be nothing, but have them check it out. Now, if this does not turn the vehicle back on, then we come to a stop, preferably to the right side of the roadway, and we get a tow, we get help, we get whatever. All right? And right there it says raise your hood and turn your flashers on. This is the universal position of I'm done, gone, and broke down. Okay, so if you want to be like I am done, gone, and broke down, and I desperately need your help, open the trunk too with everything open, the front and the back open, and the flashers going. For whatever reason, people are more inclined to assist you. I don't know why, but when I was sitting there with my hood open and my emergency lights on for half an hour, nobody helped me. My battery nearly died because of the emergency lights. So I had a secondary problem. I went to open the back to see if maybe I did have some jumper cables in case my car did die, and I did not, but once the back was open, within 2 minutes, someone pulled over. Hey, do you need some help? Yeah, I do. I'm having this issue. Awesome. They helped me out. They even had cables. They ran me some current, got my car started, got it home so I could get it towed. Because remember, my home was 14.9 miles away from my mechanic shop, so I had to have that thing like right at home, so I knew I was in range for my AAA tow. Okay. And if I haven't mentioned that before, yeah, it's. But we'll talk about AAA tomorrow too. Okay. But raise your hood with your flashers on, open up that trunk, and that will let people know that you need help. And if someone can help, they sometimes do. Right? I've had a mechanic pull over and ask me for help, or I've had someone that had the stuff specifically to help tow a vehicle pull over and ask if I needed help, because some people are just happy to help and buy the supplies so they can do so whenever they get the chance. All right, now we have total steering failure. This emergency sucks. Why? Because this emergency is Jesus take the wheel. All right, now I don't know who saved me the day that I was drinking. I don't know who wasted a miracle on me. But when I passed out on the roadway for a minute because I chose to drink and drive, I didn't crash. And that's the equivalent of total steering failure. I was very lucky that my vehicle continued straight. Most instances are not going to be so pretty. And when it happens, you have no control over the direction your vehicle is traveling. So we need to, once again, use our best judgment. All right, what do? Well, you're going to use your horn and flashers. Beep, 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 beep. Get those emergency lights on. If an individual cannot notice you there, they may get hit by you as your vehicle careens out of control, right? Now, we want to stop quickly and safely, but here's the deal. We also don't want to stop in the roadway, ideally. So if your vehicle is pointed like it's going straight down the lane, don't think that we're going to be in awesome shape and we're going to be able to keep going, because it could just jerk left or right at a moment's notice. We need to get stopped. But if you see that your vehicle is already heading off the roadway and towards a ditch or a median, maybe give it that extra moment of time so that your vehicle will get to the median, and then you hit the brakes like a crazy person and bring your car to that screeching halt. All right? Switch the vehicle into neutral, turn the car off just for that extra drop in speed if you aren't heading in a direction that looks like it's going to be beneficial if you maintain it long term. Okay, we want to make sure that once we're in the safest position available, that's when we kill the car and stop. All right, we do not want to wind up in the middle of the roadway. We do not want to wind up, like perpendicular on a travel lane. We do not want to wind up, taking up multiple travel lanes. All right, we hopefully want to get off the roadway, but that's not always an option. If you cannot get the vehicle off the roadway, make sure everything's clear before you get all your passengers out, and get everyone the heck away from the vehicle, because unfortunately drivers aren't always looking down the road like they need to. All right, now power steering failure. Okay, that's a different kind of emergency, but it's one that can make us feel really out of control, even though we're still in control. Because power steering is this awesome system that makes it easy to turn the direction that the wheels are facing. When your engine dies, your power steering dies. But the interesting thing about power steering is power steering does more work at low speeds and less work at high speeds. Okay, that's why when your power steering's having issues, it makes lots of noise while you're turning, because those big adjustments that you're doing at those low speeds, it's really working. Whereas when you're driving straight, those small adjustments you make don't really make any noise, because the vehicle, the momentum makes it want to be easier for that power steering. Because if you've ever tried to turn your steering wheel while the car is off, you'll know that it's it'll turn, but it takes way more force than that little one-handed awesomeness that people do in the movies and stuff, because power steering's dead. All right, that again is a hydraulic system, and sometimes, or in newer vehicles, it's electronic system. So some cars have a fluid, other cars don't. All right, but it's very difficult to turn the tires when power steering is off, when the vehicle's off. So power steering will be unavailable anytime the engine dies, if your steering fluid is too low, or if the drive belt, the serpentine belt, slips or breaks. Because the serpentine belt is what turns the pump that powers the power steering, right? Now, in the event that your engine dies or your power steering goes out and you're moving at rapid speed, you're not going to notice too much. You'll see that it's a little bit tougher to turn the steering wheel, but not too much. But as you start to slow down, you're going to notice, oh gosh, this is way tougher to get this wheel to turn. Okay, when you realize that, that's a power steering failure issue. Okay, we need to get off the roadway and position ourselves while we've still got some momentum, because once we get down to under 10 miles an hour, if you want to dramatically turn that wheel, you're going to need to apply a dramatic amount of force. All right, because I mean, it's just at that point you're really just working against the friction on the roadway, and it's tough. It really is. So your steering's still going to work, but you're going to have to use a ton of force. Try to get everything situated while you're still moving at a speed above 20 miles an hour, and then get that speed down rapidly to come to that stop, so that you're in a good position already and you're not having to make adjustments. Because if you have to jerk the wheel and swerve around something when your power steering's out, it's not going to happen. All right, now loss of vision. What do you do when your hood flies up? Well, first and foremost, they now put that little gap in the bottom so we can duck under and look as we come to a stop and close that hood. But what do you do if it comes all the way up, right? What do you do if it just like bam and it shatters your windshield? Well, back in the 90s, there was this wonderful movie called Ace Ventura starring the funny Mr. Jim Carrey. Hopefully he doesn't go out of fashion. Beginning of the movie, homeboy gets his windshield broken and spends the entire movie, every time he's driving, here's the window, and he's just leaning out using his eyes. And that's what you have to do. If your windshield gets shattered because your hood comes up and smashes into it, you're going to have to stick your head out the driver's side window and use that to see and steer. It's kind of crazy, a little nuts, and a little bit dangerous, especially if a flying rock hits you. If you do get into this situation, if you've got some sunglasses, toss them on just to protect your eyes. As a dude that's ridden motorcycles, when a rock hits unprotected skin that was launched by another car, yeah, it chips your windshield and it hurts like a mug when it hits you flesh. So don't let it. But yeah, if it breaks your windshield, roll down your window, stick your head out, pull over, get safely off the roadway, and call for help. And then loss of vision due to headlight failure. This person gets an A for effort, but an F for compliance with the law. It needs to be angled at a specific angle, and that yellow bulb on the back side of that needs to have a protective housing around it to be legally compliant. So don't ever drive with any nonsense like this. It's just not going to work. All right, but if your headlights do fail while you're driving at night, all we have to do, turn on our turn signal. Indicate that we're going off to the right side of the roadway, and we'll use that intermittent flashing light to help guide us, gets us off the roadway, and then we can try to address the issue. All right, I recommend keeping 2 headlights, 2 tail lights, and 2 signal lights in your vehicle at all times. Why? Because if you get pulled over and they're like, hey, your headlight's out. Oh, I've got a replacement. Let me fix that right now. It's very hard to give you a ticket for something that you fixed within 30 seconds or 5 minutes of being informed of it. Oh, officer, would you mind if I jumped out of the car to go fix that right now? I've got some spare bulbs in the trunk, or I've got some spare bulbs in the glove box. Could you give me a hand, maybe? I mean, just, throw them through a loop. Ask them for some help replacing the bulb. Maybe they'll actually do it for you. Some cops are pretty nice people. Some cops are just kind of like, they want to be heroes, and other cops understand that they're sheepdogs. They have that protective instinct. And then others just suck. But, mixed bag. Okay? So use that signal, get off the roadway, and have spares ready. Because it's much faster to just go replace a bulb than it is to wait for an Uber, get a ride, and then hoping that the store that sells it is open. And if not, now your car is stuck there all night long until the sun comes up because you can't drive in the dark. Yeah, that's a dangerous situation, folks. So be prepared. All right. Now, loss of vision due to a covered windshield or a splash windshield. Well, covered windshield, if you live where ice and snow happens, legally you are required to remove it all before you start driving. Down here, people like to go mudding. If your vehicle is covered in mud, your windshield, your headlights, your license plate, and your turn signals all need to be 100% clean before you get out on that roadway again. That is a legal requirement for covered lights and windshields. All right. If it's ice and snow, same thing. It's just that doesn't happen but maybe once a decade down here. Although, with climate shift, maybe we'll get a little more snow. But that just means that once a year, you're going to have to worry about getting it all off. All right. Remember that formula. 1 gallon of water, 1 cup of rubbing alcohol, and 1/2 cup of your favorite dish soap. All right. Now, a splashed windshield, on the other hand, is basically an environmental hazard caused by another vehicle. The easiest way to avoid this is use zone control and the Smith system. Aim high in steering. Hey, look, there's a giant puddle down the road. Every time the vehicle in the right lane goes into it, the vehicle in the left lane gets hosed. You have two options to avoid this splash. One, move into the right lane, then you will be the splasher, not the splashee. Two, don't be next to or even like within 1 second behind a vehicle in the other lane. Okay? If you are ahead of the nearest vehicle in the other lane and there's no one a couple seconds ahead of you, then they won't be able to splash you. If you're far enough behind them, the water's going to come up, go back down, and then you're going to drive through. They won't be able to splash you. But if you're right next to them, well, prepare to get hosed. All right, this happened to me, and it actually caused damage to the car. They wound up killing the entire vehicle. So it is really a good idea not to put yourself in the situation to get splashed. I was unfortunately stopped at a light, and the truck came up, and the light had changed right as I was getting ready to take off. But because of water, I wasn't like peeling off, and the truck just rolled through, hosed down the car, and parts broke. All right, don't put yourself in these situations, folks. Clean your windshield and your lights and your license plate before you drive. If they're dirty and if they're covered in ice and snow and stuff, scrape them off. And then to stay out of the splash zone, just use your brains and a good position. You got this. Now, vehicle fires. All right, these come in two varieties. They come in the engine compartment, which is where most fires occur in vehicles. All right, because we've got plastic, we've got metal, we've got heat, we've got flammable liquids. We've got a lot of things that can cause fires underneath the hood when something goes bad. So most happen there. And then we have passenger compartment fires. Most of these are caused by smokers. Someone throws a cigarette out a window, the back window is open, the air sucked that cigarette butt back in, and now the back seat's on fire. Or you had the cigarette in your mouth and you sneezed and it fell on the ground, and now the carpet underneath your feet is on fire. I was in that position once. Lost me a freshly brewed cup of coffee, but you know, it was worth it because the shampoo was much cheaper than having to, you know, replace all my carpeting because of a fire. All right, I no longer smoke, thank goodness. But never try to extinguish a engine compartment fire with anything other than a fire extinguisher. All right, because out of fire extinguisher, actually can't watch that, so I'm going to explain it to you. One moment, let me go grab our extinguisher. It is a bouncing baby extinguisher. All right, so this is the extinguisher we have here at the office. I have a smaller one in my vehicle that honestly I had brought in, but I wasn't thinking about the date. So this is a ABC fire extinguisher. Here, let me switch y'all to camera only so you can actually see this label. All right, and then boom. So C is electrical. B is flammable liquids such as oil and propellant, kerosene, and then, whoops, there we go. A is going to be trash, wood, and paper. All right, so how does a fire extinguisher help fight a fire? Well, let's see here. First and foremost, let me just show you the couple parts that you need to concern yourself with. So this is a safety tag to make sure that you don't accidentally set the dang thing off when you're just moving it about. All right? And this tag right here is also replaced annually after the extinguisher is inspected. So once this gets used and this gets broken, a fire marshal needs to recheck your extinguisher if it's for a building, or if it's a sealed one like ours. For the one for your car, not so much, because those are gonna just get used up and you'll get a new one. But check it out. So you'll pull this ring as hard as you can. That will disengage the pin that keeps this from clamping down. All right, that'll break this and it's no longer been inspected, but that's fine because we're fighting a fire. You're gonna take the hose, you're gonna aim the end at the base of the flames, not at the flames themselves, at the very bottom. All right, and this ABC extinguisher is going to combat the flame in 3 ways, and this is how. Number one, the propellant behind it is compressed CO2. Fire needs three things to live. Fire needs three things to propagate and spread: oxygen, fuel, and heat. All right, if you can manage to kill any one of those, you can manage to kill the fire. Kill the heat source, other stuff won't combust, and boom, no more fire. Kill the oxygen. Well, oxygen is a necessary part of fire. No oxygen, no fire. Boom, problem solved. And then fuel, nothing to burn, no fire. So how does the extinguisher work? Well, that propellant is compressed CO2. A, that stuff is absolutely cold, so it helps rob some of the heat. But B, it's also CO2, the opposite of air. It's the stuff we breathe out, all right? Or it's the opposite of oxygen. It's that stuff we breathe out. And fires do not survive with nothing but CO2. CO2 will stifle the oxygen flow. So now it's removing heat and it's reducing the amount of oxygen. Fantastic. What else is it doing? Well, it's also laying down a fine layer of non-flammable powder. That non-flammable powder is inert. It's just not going to respond to the heat, not going to burn, not going to nothing, and it's covering it like a blanket. So once again, we're still on oxygen denial. All right? That covering over the top is going to keep the oxygen and the fuel separated. Even if heat exists, it's not going to have that fresh oxygen supply. All right? And then the last thing that happens is that the fuel does get denied, because as you finish covering it and you get it all down, well, that fire can't spread to anything else out. Once the flames are gone, the heat gets eliminated, everything cools down, and no more fuel to burn. All right, that's how extinguishers work. Now, an extinguisher, once the vehicle looks like the one in the image right there, let's go back to the presentation. All right, once the vehicle looks like the one in the image right there, an extinguisher is just not going to cut it anymore. Like in Jackie's case, y'all remember day 10, drugs and alcohol, right? Jackie needed someone before it got to this point. This is the point she was at when she was burning. All right. Now, to her, that extinguisher might have made a big difference because A, they could have broken open the window, and if nothing else, they could have been trying to fight the fire inside the cab while someone came by to help remove her from the vehicle. So that might have changed how things went for her a little bit if someone nearby had an extinguisher. And her story is the reason that I carry an extinguisher. All right, I've used my extinguisher once, and it wasn't even on a car. I did pull over once when there was a car fire, and I asked the officer, I was like, "Officer, I've got an extinguisher here." It's like, "We've got an extinguisher there too, but I'm not getting close enough to that thing to put the fire out, because if it explodes, well, yeah, I don't care about this guy's car. I'm just trying to keep everyone back." I was like, "Fair enough," and I left. All right. But the one time I did use my extinguisher was there was a trash can fire at a city park, and I jumped out, put it out, and they took out the trash can. But hey, at least, it wasn't a fire that spread or anything. But I've got it. It's there for emergency purposes. So it denies oxygen. It robs it of heat. It covers it up to deny the fuel and the oxygen the ability to mix, and it just overall just denies fuel to the fire because everything is just getting layered in that inert dust. All right, and so the fire goes out. It's real simple, but if you try to fight the flames, you're not going to do anything. We need to remember that, like a candle, okay, the fire is burning on just off the surface. All right, it's vaporizing plastics and things, or it's vaporizing the fuel and it's burning just off the surface. That's why it looks like a candle has like a little gap between it. All right, so we don't need to worry about blowing out the flame. We need to get the wick. We need to get the base of the problem. We need to cover up that fuel source. Right? So, yeah, do that, folks. And we can't watch that video. And now we have what I like to call nobody beats the train. All right? So, I've mentioned a few times, when you come to railroad tracks, never try to beat the train. Don't try to beat the train. It's not a good idea to beat the train. Well, let's take a look at some videos of what happens to very large vehicles when the train meets them, because, well, quite frankly, these 18-wheelers and other vehicles don't survive the encounter, and hopefully that'll convince you that you might not. But stalls on railroad tracks. So Try and restart your vehicle if known train is coming. Immediately tell your passengers to get out. Shift the vehicle into neutral and try to push it off the tracks. There's a small problem though. If you're in the wrong area, some sections of tracks are magnetized. They are magnetized to reinforce the train's ability to stay on the tracks as it makes slight maneuvers. If the magnets have been turned on and you have a stall on the tracks and the magnetic force gets a hold of you, your engine could definitely pull you away from that and you probably wouldn't even notice. But you pushing that vehicle off that magnetic force is probably not going to happen unless you got, like the squad with you and everyone just is making grunty noises shoving. All right, so if you can't move the car in the first few moments, run away from it. Just do not be right next to that guy because when that car gets hit, she's gonna get turned into confetti. All right, vehicles are, they're lots and lots of small metal pieces and bits of glass and things like that. And when as much force as a train hits collides with them, they become debris fields. All right, so do not stay near the vehicle. But another thing you can do is call 911. Hey, my vehicle just broke down on the railroad tracks. It's at this intersection. Please call the train yard. Let them know. Hopefully they can slow down, stop, or divert the train. Problem is they can take up to 3 miles for a train to stop. 3 miles, because remember, stopping distance is based on weight, and trains have lots and lots and lots of weight behind them. So they can take up to 3 miles to stop. So even if you call them and they're still 3 minutes away because they're going 60, your car might still get obliterated. All right, so don't stay by the vehicle. All right, and then in what direction should you run towards the train or away from the train once you see there is a train coming towards your vehicle? Well, in this example, this hand will be the train, this will be your car, and it will illustrate the direction you need to be moving. As we noticed, the cup flew well that way, and so will the cloud of broken bits of stuff that used to be your vehicle when it gets struck by the train. So you want to run in that direction, the same direction the train is coming from, so as not to wind up in the debris field. Now we're going to see on 3 separate clips on the following video what happens when a logging truck gets hit by a train, and you will be able to see what kind of launch the train was able to put on some of those beams. So let's go ahead and jump onto Nobody Beats the Train. Boom, that was a bucket truck.
Oh my God.
That's a 30,000-pound truck, and it's got cream. And that's what my Amazon package was late last year. That's a joke. There goes all my ramen. $200 worth of ramen were ruined today.
There goes the train.
Oh, damn!
Oh,
Another $200
God.
worth of ramen total.
That was not good. Hopefully nobody was in the semi.
And boom. And that's the first one. You saw the logs jump up into the air higher than the head of the train. We will get a much better view of that one. We'll get one outside the train and we'll get one from the train itself. Here's outside. There's the logging trucks just kind of stopping the tracks. And boom, look at that. They actually accelerated faster than the train for a few moments. All right, and that train was going 60. 40. See, there's a train going 5 miles an hour, and it's like, nope, can't stop, you're coming with me.
Som genom ett under
Drag that
skadades inte
18
den
like
här
he's a puppy.
lastbilschauffören.
And then gravity beats the train. And if them hitting you causes this to happen, you may be found liable if you left your vehicle on the tracks.
can't believe it's actually happening.
Now here's a derailment. Now there's so much inertia behind the cabooses behind it that this fuel tanker got shoved another 200 yards to crash into the engine and then derail itself. That was really
It looks as if the truck is in the clear, but the line of cars backed up at the traffic light forces it to stop as a 118-car freight train bears down.
This is how we got cool crash videos before YouTube. World's wildest car crashes. Oh, and here's the train itself. Check this out, folks. Boom! Look at that. Look at that one log traveled easily 200 feet in the air.
The trailer is sheared off
That
and
was my
pulverized.
45-mile-an-hour train. There's a 20-mile-an-hour train. Must be gone. Car. There's that Amazon package train there. I know. Next, please, stop. Keep going. Keep going. And going. And going. Oh. And then this person. I hate that last one. I really do. That last person disregarded the gling, 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 gling because the arms were not down. They were like, I'm gonna make it. And they didn't. Yeah, folks, never try to beat the train. Right? Survivability is super low. And just because it did happen relatively recently, and I mean, I don't even feel like I should have to tell you all this, but hey, the other person didn't say anything, so in the event that you run into a little issue with law enforcement and you do get placed into the back seat of a vehicle, if that vehicle is currently parked on a set of train tracks, as you comply very politely and courteously and without acting a fool or anything and continue to just do your part to not get in extra trouble and stay respectful, even if you get to that point where you're getting arrested, please let them know, hey officer, I am not safe being left in a vehicle that I can't escape from that's parked on railroad tracks. Can we please move this vehicle? Because I'd really rather not, lose my life in the event that a train comes. Because a young lady was arrested, falsely arrested as a matter of fact, because someone made a claim that a vehicle looking like hers did a crime. So they pulled her over, they put her in the back of a squad car that was parked on railroad tracks. And no one saw a problem with this. And then they heard the train, and someone goes, hey, there's a train coming. And someone tried to say something like, no, it's on the other set of tracks or something like that. But that's when the train goes, bamf, and nearly killed the young lady that had just been placed in the back. So if you find yourself about to be in that same situation, let them know that you're not comfortable in that situation. And if they say, well, that doesn't matter, well, you've got it on body cam, and in the event that you survive, you have evidence that says that you made a statement that said you weren't safe, you didn't feel safe, and they ignored it. And in the event that you pass away, well, they'll still have that body cam footage, and your family can make that same statement, and you don't have to wind up in a court battle that's ridiculous. Because that young lady is, even though she was nearly killed. But anyway, because, people make mistakes. They do silly things, and we don't think about them. Now, driver error. All right, should you drive off the roadway? Now, you've gone over this in the homework, but we go over this again. Okay, hold firmly onto the steering wheel and take your foot off the accelerator and don't be pressing the gas or the brakes. Why? Because 2 of your tires are on the roadway and have perfect traction. Because that's what blacktop is. That's what paved road is it's a surface that provides maximum traction to vehicles. They've figured out a formula, a recipe to make the stuff as good as it can be, and that's what we're operating off of. Okay, so when 2 tires are on that, maximum traction. when two tires are driving on mud, grass, dead grass, leaf litter, plant matter, just dirt, they're not going to have that same level of traction as they do on blacktop. So if you try to accelerate when you're half on and half off, your vehicle may actually turn off the road even though you're trying to turn on, because these tires are going to be pushing harder and they're going to push your vehicle that way. It's going to make your vehicle hook off the road like you were making a right turn, because of the difference in the amount of traction and torque that they're providing. So once again, we want to slow down to like under 20 miles an hour. And then once you've done so, straddle the roadway. If you don't have control of your vehicle, you should not be turning the steering wheel. Select a place where the shoulder is close to the roadway level. Then signal. Check your mirrors and your blind spot. Always start with a signal because you got to do it for 4 seconds for coming back onto the roadway. Just like when you're parked on the side of the road. So signal first, mirrors, blind spot. If everything's golden, steer quickly. This is the one time we're going to make that NASCAR lane change. You're going to take the wheel, you're going to turn it dramatic, move over, turn it back. You want to jump back up onto the roadway, but not until you're going less than 20 miles an hour. At that speed, even with the dramatically different road conditions, you should still be able to have enough control to jump back up onto the roadway. All right, doing so at a faster speed is going to put you at risk of losing control again and escalating the situation to a much worse collision, possibly even a rollover. All right, don't do that, folks. Slow down, be safe, find a good spot where the roadway is level, and then once you're under 20, get back up onto the roadway if the road is clear. All right, now roadway hazards, potholes. Avoid them if possible. If not, to prevent tire damage, slow down dramatically. We don't want to hit a pothole going faster than 10. Just like a turn, we want to be at 10 or lower. A pothole, we want to be at 10 or lower. And the bigger the pothole, the lower. All right? And then try and predict where it's going to be the shallowest and hit it at that point. That way the vehicle goes down as little and up as little as possible. Because if it goes too deep, it could like immediately damage your vehicle. I lost a front axle to a pothole that was big enough to take both my front tires and just ripped it off because I hit it doing 60. Didn't know it was there. Oh well. Sharp curves, right? Brake gently as you enter. Halfway through, look ahead and start to accelerate gently. Now, halfway through a curve doesn't mean you're halfway through the maneuver. It means halfway through the curve itself. So check this out. You're curving, you're curving, you're curving, and now the road's going to finish that way. This is the point when we start accelerating right as we're at that halfway point and the road starts to straighten out. You don't do it while the road is still dramatically curving. You want to make sure that you're 90% done with the curve itself, and then you just have that last leg of it. We start accelerating. All right? Then objects in the road, check for traffic. If you can change lanes to avoid the object, use your signals and do so. It's legal to do so because you have an object in the roadway. All right? If you do not have that room, if you do not have that ability, or if you have a solid line on your side of the roadway and it's legally prohibited, decide whether to straddle or swerve around the object. All right? If it's close enough to the middle, move yourself to the right side of the lane and just go around the object. Or if it's close enough to the left side, move yourself to if it's close enough to the right side of the roadway, move yourself to the left side of the lane and try to get around it without encroaching in on the other lane. All right? But sometimes we're going to straddle. We're going to drive over the object. Determine if that's safe. If you know for a fact that it's lower than the vehicle, it's like a 2x4 with some nails in it, and it's angled in that right way where you know you can just go straight over it, do that. But if it's like a cardboard box and it looks like you're probably going to hit it, you don't know if it's bricks, you don't know if it's sand, you don't know if it's a box full of puppies. Because I kid you not, one time on a road I saw a box that said free puppies. And I swerved into the other lane and back and went around it because like heck I was going to hit a freaking box that said free puppies. Because it might have had free puppies. I would have just, I don't think I would have ever driven again had I hit a cardboard box and heard puppies dying or saw like a smear. That would have just destroyed me and I would have never driven again because I'm that kind of person. So yeah, stuff happens. You don't know what's inside. Decide what the safest thing to do is. And if you have to come to a stop to get it the heck out of your way, do so. All right? One of our drivers panicked and drove over something that got stuck underneath the vehicle. We had to dislodge it, which meant we had to back up a little bit on the roadway, and it was a big fiasco. So please, try to pay attention and figure out what the safest thing to do is. If you know your vehicle is not going to have the clearance to get over it, don't try to drive over it. All right? Because dragging something behind you or underneath you, those things can bounce and then cause extra damage underneath. All right? And now, vehicle in deep water. Here's your situation. Okay? You're on your way to the island and the bridge collapses as you're driving over. Now, if right now you are going, that would never happen. The Queen Isabella Causeway has already collapsed due to a boat collision once. And there was loss of life because people didn't know how to respond. Okay, so that's, and if you don't know what the Queen Isabella Causeway is, that's the bridge that takes you to Padre Island. All right, that bridge right there. The new one is the new one because it got broken. All right, so this is what you do, folks. All right, and the only thing I'm going to add to this is at the end of the video they say follow the bubbles. To know what direction is up if you get disoriented underwater. And though that's great advice, you also need the addendum, do not stay in the stream of bubbles, because the way swimming works is we're displacing water. If you try to swim through a stream of bubbles, you're in fact displacing air instead of bubbles, and suddenly it'll be like you have your full weight back and you're going to drop in the water. This happened to me when an underwater bubble popped, and I fell basically 20 feet onto the floor and then water crashed in on me. That was more painful. But it was like quicksand. I had no choice. It just yanked me straight down like I was dropping. So do not stay in an airstream of bubbles coming out of a sinking vehicle in the event you're trying to swim to safety. But here you go. Let's get me out of here so you can see the whole screen.
How to escape from a sinking car. In order to survive in an extreme situation, you'd better make sure you know what to do in advance. After all, when it's crunch time, you might only have seconds to act. There are two very important steps in this unfortunate situation. As soon as the car makes contact with the water, unfasten your seatbelt and roll down the window as fast as you can. Once you've done that, immediately vacate the car through the open window before the vehicle becomes submerged. And that's basically it if there are no unexpected problems. Remember that you'll only have about a minute to complete these two steps before the car sinks completely underwater. Do not waste time trying to open the door. It simply will not budge because of the force of the water pressing on it from the outside. Memorize the sequence. Unfasten the seatbelt, lower the window, climb out of the car. It's your only chance of survival. A crank window will give you the best means of escape. But here's a promising fact. According to test results, a car's electronics continue to function for at least 10 minutes after it becomes submerged. So, if you have power windows, you can still get out. Now, let's look at some possible hiccups you might encounter. If you can't get the window to roll down, break it. The quicker you react, the better. Don't even try breaking the windshield. It's made of extra strong, crash-resistant triplex safety glass. There are actually tons of online shops that offer special car window breaking tools at affordable prices. So just look it up on the internet, buy one, and keep it in your car. Another option is to use some heavy object with a pointed tip like a hammer, wrench, or heavy screwdriver. If you don't have any of these, you can use a stiletto heel or simply your elbow. If your car seats have removable headrests, you can also use the metal prongs at the end of those. Aim your blows at the corners of the window where the glass is weaker. If there are children in the car, make sure to shove them out ahead of yourself. In fact, experts recommend the following plan of action. First, unbuckle your seatbelt and lower your window. Only after your window is open should you help your children. In the case of just one child, unfasten their seatbelt and push them out ahead of you. If there are several children, help them from oldest to youngest. Once you've gotten your kids out, leave the car yourself. Older children are first since they can potentially help the younger ones. That way, everybody gets out safely. If you absolutely can't get out through the window, wait until the car fills completely with water and then open the door. It seems like the craziest and scariest thing ever, but it works. Waiting for some time will allow the pressure inside and outside the car to equalize. Experts recommend keeping a firm grip on the door handle while the water fills the inside. When the inside and outside pressures equal out, take a deep breath of the last bit of air, open the door, and swim out. Remember that the door will not open easily. You may have to push it with your feet, so be ready for that.
You will have to push it with your feet, most likely.
Follow the air bubbles to find your way to the surface. When you've successfully gotten out of your car, you can easily become disoriented underwater. This is because the water around the sinking car gets murky and clouded. It could also simply be due to pure fear and panic. To find your way out, swim in the same direction as the rising air bubbles. They will lead you to the surface. Now, let's go through the two-step survival plan once again. As soon as the car hits the water, unfasten your seatbelt. Roll down or break the window and get out as quickly as you can. Let's hope that you'll never actually have to put the knowledge to use, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, isn't it?
It is better to be safe than sorry. All right, now for those breakers, they have some that are a push button where you just like press a little button. You put it up to the glass, you press a little button, and a little plastic missile just hits the glass at something like 100 miles an hour and it just shatters the windows. I've tried a bunch of different ones because, well, junkyard, and I found a guy that would charge me $5 per window I broke on like old junky cars that nobody ever pulled parts from, and I was like, sweet, because I wanted to try a few out, find out which ones worked. The hammer ones work nice, but you need, you know, the presence of mind and the swing, the room to swing, and the force behind it. So I don't recommend those. But that little missile one, you just push this little thing back in. It was spring loaded. It had two little things that you pull and you push, and at the same time, and it was a little awkward to reload. But once it was reloaded, I'd put that thing up to glass, press the button, and shatter. All right. It did not shatter. Well, it did shatter a windshield, but it didn't like put a hole in it, other than the dart itself got halfway through, because those are basically triple ply reinforced glass. It's like that because they didn't used to be. So having that tool is definitely beneficial. The ones that require, you know, like muscle power aren't always the best ones, but the thing is the one that you press the button, you have to be holding it against the glass completely. And if you're panicking, you may not do that. You press it the wrong way, and now you're gonna have to reset it, or that little missile could shoot out completely, and now your breaker's gone. All right. The only way that your vehicle's not gonna have that power for those 10 minutes though when it hits the water is if the battery gets disengaged by the crash, which means you hit the water front end first. That's most common, unfortunately, when you drive off the side of the road, but it has to be a significant impact, so it has to be a big drop to get it to knock that battery loose. So unless you fell a ridiculous distance, you might still have that power, folks. And in the event that the car is not right side up, just understand that it's going to be a crazy ride. Stay calm, try to follow the instructions, and you are going to have to get one of those doors open if it's upside down. All right. Let's see here, but alrighty then. And then minimizing effects of a collision. All right, because sometimes life happens and you have no choice in the matter. You're gonna crash. You're gonna. You have lost control of your car. You just got control back, and now you're in a choice where you've got a cement barrier and a tree, and you gotta crash into one of them. What do we choose? Right? So think about it. Do we want to crash into a cement barrier or the tree? And if anybody is courageous enough to venture a guess, right? Though my list is long, I still do have 7 people that are actually here. So, anybody have a guess on which one of these two is going to be safer? The cement barrier or a tree? Nothing? All right, that's cool. No worries. People don't like to be wrong. It's quite all right. Well, the correct answer is the thing that we should be aiming for is the one that was put there by the highway people, right? Not by God. God made something beautiful, they made something functional. All right, because even though the cement barrier might seem like the worst idea, those barriers are designed to absorb and like move with the impact of a crash. Trees, on the other hand, are Gandalf. Trees are straight up telling you, you shall not pass. A 12-inch tree is more likely to stop a car owned by a private citizen, meaning an SUV, a truck, a van, a car. A 12-inch tree is more likely to survive than you are if you ran into that tree at 60 miles an hour. Okay, anything under a 3-inch, you might be able to just knock right over and deal severe damage to your vehicle. But any kind of like substantial tree, any kind of tree that's been there for a few years is definitely going to have the knockdown power, the stand-up power to withstand your crash. And remember, the force that we experience is reduced by crush damage. That's why when that car rotated as after it hit the back of that 18-wheeler in that video, it was getting rid of extra power. Well, if you remember the video with the egg that broke when he threw it and the other egg that didn't, well, this is the big stopping power over a little time. This is an Humpty Dumpty was broken, folks. All right? All the king's horses and all the king's men won't be able to put you back together again if you make the wrong decision on this. So always aim for the safety devices. That picture looks effing scary with that metal bar wrapped around the car. But the fact of the matter is that metal bar did exactly what it was supposed to. It stopped the car from hitting other cars. Okay? The safety equipment's going to do its job, and trust that that's what you need to be aiming for, because that tree, it's just not going to budge. All right? Always aim for the safety devices, and don't give up. Don't be like, all right, whatever happens, happens. No. Try to minimize the effects of the collision. Keep in control of the vehicle. Steer for something that's going to have give, something that's going to move after you hit it. And I know this sounds counterintuitive. I know this sounds like the dumbest thing you've ever heard. But right before you crash, don't brace for impact. When we brace for impact, we're tightening our muscles, and then inertia is making our body do the move anyway. So instead of trying to fight the movement, relax, go limp, go ragdoll. Right before the collision, once you have done everything you can to steer yourself right at that spot, go limp. Why? Because intoxicated drivers are more likely to survive a collision than non-intoxicated drivers. Because the second our brain processes that we're in an accident, we tense up, and that tension can cause bones to break, muscles to tear, internal organs to get damaged because of that tension we put on ourselves. I mean, you can pop a blood vessel in your head going to the bathroom. That's how delicate our insides are when it comes to over-tightening stuff up. All right? So right before the collision, try to relax. Try to go limp. All right? This is going to minimize the effects of the collision because it's essentially preventing you from having that adverse response to the crash. You are not fighting it, you're going with it, and therefore you are increasing your survivability rate. All right? So always aim for the safety devices. Don't give up on yourself. Keep in control of the vehicle till that very last moment. Steer for something soft and go limp. It helps. It really does. All right? And then head-on collision, folks. The last thing we're going to discuss. If you are driving at night and you see another driver is coming the wrong way, we need to steer to the right-hand side. Why? Because they believe they are going the right way. They believe they are going the proper direction on the road that they're traveling on, and the lane we drive in is on the right side of the road. So if we go to our right and they go to their right, everyone's going to be fine. Now, if we go to our left, like the driver of the Exxon Valdez super tanker did when he should have gone right, then the same thing that happened back then happened. There was a collision. That happened to be between two boats and the Exxon Valdez because it did not go right to avoid the collision. Dumped millions of gallons of oil, and it was a terrible ecological disaster. Though your car crash may not be a terrible ecological disaster, it'll be just as disastrous for your family because a car crash that occurs at 60 miles an hour is more likely to kill you or leave you severely injured than for you to suffer minor injuries or no injuries, right? Now, when two cars going 30 miles an hour crash head on, that's a 60 mile an hour crash. If two cars crash at going 90 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, we're already over 100 miles an hour on that collision, and your chances of survival are much lower than, well, you'd want them to be. Pretty much guaranteed that unless a miracle happens, you will lose your life, folks. So do not go left. If you see a wrong way driver, stick to the right hand side of the road, call the cops. All right? Now, there are systems on there, and you can look up the emergency link blink system for wrong way drivers on YouTube. It's a great video, but we ain't got time today. All right, folks. Now, that's it for class. So every day, make the world a better place, but first, do no harm. Every day, make that choice, make that change, make that decision to take one step closer to that you want to be, to take one step closer to that life you want to live, to take one step closer to being the best you can be, right? Because that power's in your hands, folks. That decision to change, that ability is right there. All right, I smoked for 25 plus years telling myself I couldn't quit. And then my dad gave me some bad news about his health, and I quit from one day to the next because I could quit. I told myself I was going to quit, and I did. And I'm on it's November, I'm on month 5 now. The 14th will mark 5 months. So folks, the power to change who and what you are is in your hands. You got it. Now, does anyone have any thing that I can assist you with very quickly before we go, or is that it? All right, because that is class for today, folks. I will be getting today's homework assignment, of course, posted up, and then the final live stream link for tomorrow, day 15, will get posted up. We'll be talking about insurance, buying a car, and I'll give you a little bit of life advice if you want to hang out and listen to it. If not, there will still be the homework assignment for day 15. And the final exam, day 16 assignment. Now that thing is over 140 questions, so it will take you over the 2 hours, or it will take you the 2 hours to complete it. There is also an opportunity there to give us feedback if you like what we do, if you see that there's somewhere where we can develop better, or if you have any issues or concerns that were not addressed by me as the instructor or by the program, please let us know, because your ability to give feedback will be on that final exam, and we do appreciate it, because we can't fix something unless we know it's broke. Hopefully you like me at least enough as an instructor that you feel that I gave you a good education, because that's my goal. All right, if y'all kind of think I'm a pushy jerk and that I'm constantly telling y'all what to do, well, that's because I want y'all to be safe, just like your parents do. Only difference is that at the end of the day, if you don't like me, I'm not going to be happy, but it's not going to break me either. All right, folks. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and we get to come in tomorrow for the final class on day 15, Teen Driver Education, the Hernandez Driveway, where we will be talking about insurance and buying a car. Tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. So everyone, I will see y'all then live at 5 for your afternoon driving lesson here with Steve and Hernandez Driving School. Bye, everyone. Keep being awesome, folks. We'll see you then.